Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Carmenlita Scott. I'm President and CEO of the ATL Airport Chamber. Welcome to Friday Facts. Our sponsor this morning is helping the senior citizen community and frontline healthcare workers. Please join me in welcoming Michelle Davis, owner of Yoga Hive Studio. Michelle?
Well, thank you very much. I am Michelle Davis with the Yoga Hive Studio. Thank you all so much for yielding your time and your attention this morning to me. I believe, and I know firsthand actually, that yoga and meditation can be beneficial to everyone at every age. And as a certified yoga therapist, I've worked and I continue to work for Clayton County Senior Services for over 14 years now, also serving the Morehouse College and Morehouse School of Medicine family for over 8 years now. I go wherever I teach wherever I go. And at the Yoga Hive Studio, we believe in offering the experience of total body wellness. And so if given the opportunity, I would like for you to tell me how I can assist you in incorporating this wonderful lifestyle as a part of your practice to help reduce stress, tension, tightness, stiffness, and gain flexibility and range of motion in your body. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Michelle, thank you. We're looking forward to virtual classes for the ATL Airport Chamber members, which I understand is coming soon.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Today, Friday Facts will address the SBA disaster loans. Our keynote speaker is Terri Denison. Terri is the Georgia District Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration, and she has been in this role since May of 2002. She is responsible for overseeing the implementation of the SBA's financial, counseling, training, and business development programs for small business throughout Georgia. Terri holds a BA degree in American Government from Cornell University and an MA degree in Urban Studies from Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. She's a graduate of the Federal Executive Institute in Charlottesville, Virginia. It is my distinct honor to welcome Terri Denison this morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Wow, this has just been a very interesting period of time in terms of not only the situation with COVID-19, but the impact, more importantly, that it's had on the business community and economic activity. And now SBA, the Small Business Administration, along with the Treasury Department, are in the throes of trying to offer assistance to get our small businesses through this very difficult period. I will preface what I'm going to say with things are changing even as we speak. We got our proposed rules for one of the programs I'm going to mention literally about 11:30 last night. So did a little late night homework. But what I'll do is I'll run through what the basic programs are, because with the passage of the CARE Act last week, there are some additional tools that are now available for small businesses to help them weather the storm. The first program I'm going to mention is the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loans, or EIDL. This is not a new program. It is part of the SBA's regular disaster assistance toolkit, and has been around for decades, along with some of the other disaster assistance programs. However, this particular program was the first tool deployed by the SBA to try and address the economic challenges that small businesses are facing. So the economic injury disaster loans, or EIDLs as we call them, but I always like to explain what these terms are, is a long-term loan, can be up to 30 years. The loans can be up to $2 million, and the proceeds are used to cover the expenses of the business. That could be payroll, that could be accounts payable, other bills that a business may have regardless of whether they have revenue coming in. You know, you have fixed costs and you have to keep those covered. So the loans will be used for that particular purpose. The current interest rate, and these are set by a formula established in statute and law, and they're adjusted, I believe, quarterly or semi-annually. The interest rate for small businesses for this loan currently is 3.75%. Unlike the regular SBA loan programs, guaranteed loan programs, which nonprofits are generally not eligible for, they are eligible for the EIDLs, or the EIDL loans, and the interest rate for them are 2.5%. The nonprofits are private nonprofits, so it can't be a public entity or quasi-governmental. For this particular economic disaster, there's an automatic deferment of up to a year before you have to start repayment, and that's after the last disbursement of funds on the loan. You can actually apply for these loans on the SBA website, sba.gov/disaster. I know that initially when we started accepting applications, which I think we were all concerned would happen, the system was just overloaded with applicants seeking to access the portal and upload their applications, because this is a nationally declared disaster, which is very unusual. Usually it's a localized phenomenon, but so people were having problems. I know last weekend they actually revamped the portal, and my understanding so far is that it's working well. If any of you have tried to submit an application, say this week, and that has not been the case, please let me know, because we are feeding that information back up to our headquarters office and the Office of Disaster Assistance, who runs the disaster assistance loan program. So that's the EIDL. Now with the CARES Act, which was just enacted, another feature that has been added to the EIDL is an advance. We call it the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance. And with that, you can actually receive up to $10,000 and within 3 days. And the idea of this is that usually it takes about 10 days to 2 weeks for the disaster loan to be approved. They're working now to even try to make that quicker, because we know speed is important in this particular situation. But they have set up the advance so that businesses can immediately start trying to cover expenses that they have. If you apply in the portal at this point, you will automatically be able to request that advance. Another thing, this is not under the CARES Act, but something we've always had is the SBA Express Bridge loans. And it also works in conjunction with someone who's applying for the EIDL, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. The SBA Express program is one of our standard guarantee programs for smaller loan amounts. It's a streamlined process, and lenders have to be approved to participate with that particular program. With this particular tool, we allow those lenders to make a loan up to $25,000. Because it's an streamlined process and an expedited process, they can generally get not enough caffeine this morning, generally get those loans turned around very quickly within a few days. And then when the EIDL is approved, part of those proceeds could be used to pay off that bridge loan. So it's just another mechanism for trying to get capital to business owners in these emergency situations as quickly as possible. Going back to the CARES Act, probably the program that everybody's most interested in, and there's been a lot of discussion around, is the Paycheck Protection program, or PPP. Essentially, this program allows for, it works similar to the EIDL loans, in that it can cover, at least 75% of it has to cover payroll cost. The other 25% can cover some overhead cost. The key here, though, is that the loan can be forgivable, which is very different than our regular loan guarantee program. So this particular program is a loan that is guaranteed by SBA 100%, but the funds come from a participating lender. Anybody who's a participating SBA lender can make these loans at this time. And there's a process in place to have other lenders who don't necessarily participate with our programs currently to apply and become a participating lender in this particular program. The forgiveness, basically the loan would cover your payroll costs, like I said, at least 75%, mortgage interest payments, and also mortgage payments if you are purchasing the building in which your business resides. It would cover there's a formula calculation, and I haven't gotten it down to memory yet because I'm still studying the regulations here. But basically, you would calculate what your payroll costs are for 8 weeks from the time that the loan is approved to cover, your employees. So this way, you can keep them on the payroll. Because what often happens is something like this extends for a period of time, the business has to shut down, people have to, of course, continue to make a living, so you may lose those employees. And then when the economic situation gets better, then you really are almost starting from scratch, because you have to open up the operations and you may have to go through the process of trying to secure new employees. The idea here is to keep the employees connected to you, covering their salary, their wages, their benefits, etc., as well as some overhead for the business. If you are able to show that you've kept those employees and that you've kept their pay at the level basically that they were at prior to this situation occurring, then you would have that loan forgiven. If there is some shortfall in that, then a percentage would be forgiven, basically, but not all of it. So those loans are available now, at least for small business and for small businesses like your LLCs, your S Corps, sole proprietors. Next week, 1099, independent contractors will be able to access this program. That will be starting next Friday, April 10th. Today was the first day for small businesses, non-1099 contractors. So that's the basic things that we have right now. If by chance you or someone who is has a current SBA loan or SBA guaranteed loan, more specifically, there is a tool in the CARES Act that essentially gives funds to SBA to cover the payments of those borrowers on those loans for 6 months. And that's their principal payment as well as their interest. Keeping in mind that the SBA normally allows for lenders to defer payments up to 6 months. And a lot of the lenders have been utilizing that particular authority that we've given them. But this is something that could be stacked on top of that to extend. It's actually better than a deferment, because you can defer payments up to 6 months, but then you'd actually have 6 months of payments that are covered by federal funds, and that business, would not have to repay that portion to the bank. So I know I said a lot, and there's a lot to digest. So, I'm glad to answer any questions. One thing I will say is you can go to our website, sba.gov, and look for disaster assistance funding options. And I will send that link to Carmenlita so that she can share that with you. But there you can get a more detailed explanation of all these things I've just mentioned.
Well, thank you, Terry. We do have one question. The question is, I've applied for my loan application, and it was great. Thanks for all involved. We're grateful for the help and appreciate your dedication to help all small business. EIDL loans and PPP loans can do both, and how do you make sure you don't duplicate the cost between both loans so you stay out of trouble? Also,
Yes.
what if you hire more people than you had before, as you may have been in the process of doing that anyway?
Ooh, okay, that's a good one. I've not heard that scenario about what if it's more. And that may be one, if you can keep track of who asked the question for me, I can get back with a specific answer. But in terms of the duplication part, basically, you can, if it's not used for the same purposes, you can have an EIDL and you can have the PPP. Keeping in mind that the PPP's main objective is focusing on employees and payroll. So you could use the IDL for covering your other expenses. Okay, and then that way, the PPP, you could use 100% of it. You know, not just 75, but you could use 100% of it for payroll purposes. And then the other things like the accounts payables, the mortgage or lease cost, those could be covered by EIDL.
Well, thank you. I will also send you that person's information so they can connect with you directly.
Okay, because I'm definitely going to ask that question because I have not received it. It's probably one of those things no one thought of. You know, you try to think of everything when you're drafting these bills and legislation and regulations, and then there's always that situation that you just didn't envision. So thank you for sharing that, and I'll get an answer for you.
Okay, our next question is, what docs are required to apply?
Okay, basically, I don't have exact forms or anything, but basically I know for the EIDL, you need to submit your latest tax return for the business. We're assuming that's going to be 2018 versus 19 because a lot of people have not filed their 2019 and that's been extended. If you do not have that, then profit and loss statements and balance sheet for the most current year that you have them available, either hopefully 2018, you can submit those. There is what we call the Form 5, SBA Form 5 that is embedded into the portal that just asks for basic information about the business, who the principals are, et cetera. You would provide a schedule of your liabilities to give them an idea of what needs to be covered by the idle. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. If you, on the idle loans, if they will look at collateral, if it's over 25,000, if it's under 25,000, it's just we just treat it as an unsecured loan. Now, if it's over 25,000 and you do not have available collateral, that's not going to be a game stopper. You know, that we will not decline, SBA will not decline the loan because you don't have it. It's just that legally we're required to get a lien on any available property or collateral that there is. And usually try that, have that be the business assets. Sometimes it can also mean personal assets if there isn't a heavy business asset. So that's for the EIDL. In terms of the PPP, you would provide information around your payroll cost. So anything to substantiate that. I think there may be actually a form that's being developed to capture that. But in the meantime, there is guidance on what they're looking for, so you can provide that information and do the calculation that way.
Terry, which banks are approved participant lenders?
Wow. Really, just about, well, definitely all the major lenders are, the Wells Fargo's, the Chases, I guess now Truist, uh, all of those are. Um, Citizens Trust Bank is a participating lender as well. So all the major lenders, and then a lot of community lenders, smaller lenders participate with SBA as well. They just introduced a tool on our website where you can look up by zip code the SBA participating lenders in that zip code or within so many mile radius of that zip code, and that is on our website.
So is that where you would find the list of lenders that would provide the funding?
That would be a starting point. Now the thing that we're working through now, and I know the administrator of SBA as well as the Secretary of Treasury have been working on with especially some of the larger lenders, is making sure get their buy-in to participate. So it may be a matter of, and I will say this, it may be a matter of, some lenders may decide to opt out, but that's your starting point. If they aren't a participating SBA lender, they are already approved to do this without any additional application process. A lot of them, which I sense will happen, is they'll do them for their current customers. So this is why it's always important to have that banking relationship established before you need them. So I think that could see that happening. But I would use that list as a starting point and go from there. Start with your bank that you do business with.
Thank you. In the disaster form, is there an option to specify no payroll?
Is there an option to specify that payroll is not included?
Correct. It says to specify no payroll.
There is I don't know if I don't think it's necessarily specific, but there is a general area for additional comments and notes. So we've been encouraging people to use that. And you could indicate there that this is exactly what I'm want to use the proceeds for, and that it will not include payroll. And you might even indicate I'm also looking at PPP.
Okay, so if someone's applied for the disaster relief loan, how long will it take to hear back?
We're talking about the EIDL, the disaster loan?
I believe so.
Economic injury disaster loan. On those, because I know that they initially got swamped, so they're playing a little bit of catch up with this new portal that was instituted. They were saying originally about 10 days. Once again, they're trying to get that number down. One of the things I am looking to do, because I've gotten that question or that feedback from several businesses over the last few days, is to check to see if we have a protocol in place for helping people to know what the status is.
Okay, and did we hear you correctly that you can apply for both the EIDL loan and the PPP loan?
You can. It's just that they cannot duplicate. And another thing, I'm just thinking back to my late night homework reading. If there is overlap, say with the EIDL, and this is maybe your safe harbor. If there is overlap, then if you say get the PPP later than the EIDL, then you could use part of the PPP to pay off the EIDL that would portion. So that's another way you're not going to end up going to jail or anything.
We have someone that filled out the basic SBA EIDL loan form, but it didn't ask them to submit any documents.
That may be the new portal. So it didn't ask for any documents.
That is correct. It did not ask to submit any documents.
Okay. And that, I got a feeling that that's something they're going to be coming back for and asking. I'm going to just explain a little bit how this is set up, because I know we talk SBA kind of in general terms. Office of Disaster Assistance is really almost like a separate operation within SBA. So they're the ones who actually are hands-on with the application process, updates, et cetera. So the district office, which I'm the director of, the field office, the general field offices do not have direct access to that system. So what we're trying to do is help get information out on the program, but also if there are problems and prospective borrowers are not getting a response, then we're trying to run that interference for them. So that's one I can double check. Like I said, that has come up, and I can get a better idea of how they're going to communicate, what the exact time frame. The last one I heard was like 10 days to 2 weeks, but I know they're trying to shorten that.
Thank you. Terri, our next question is, would you please forward information if we're onboarding more employees during the PPP loan? So if you have that information, when you check that out, if you'll send it to me, I will send it to all participants that were on the call.
Okay, that would be good.
And is there an option for online fintech lenders?
That fintech lenders have been brought into the fold, into the discussions about delivering PPP. So they will be eligible. There are certain criteria that they have to meet, but they're not categorically excluded.
Okay, Terri, what if somebody's applied for the EIDL loan and the SBA's checked their credit, but they've not heard back from them? Is there someone in particular they can contact to check the status of the application?
The usual answer is they could call the toll-free number for the customer service center, or they could send an email to disaster customer service at sba.gov. I've talked to a couple business owners like, well, I've done that and I haven't heard back. I know that this week they were onboarding probably another couple, trying to bring in about 2,000 additional contractors to help with the answering of the phones at the toll-free customer service line. So that may be changing. I'm hoping that means people can get through better and get that information. But those are the two official pathways right now.
So we have a caller that says they believe in order for the loan to be forgiven, funds must be used for payroll within 8 weeks from receipt. However, what if the mandated quarantine period exceeds beyond that time?
Well, this is something that I think that both SBA and Treasury is monitoring. For example, the regulations that I referenced, they are classified as what we call interim final, which means that, yes, we're going to be using these regulations right now, but as things progress, the scenario changes, and also the feedback we get from both borrowers and lenders about how this is working or where there's ambiguity, there'll be opportunities to go back and change this. So if, God forbid, it does extend, then I could see where SBA and Treasury would work with Congress to extend the period of time.
So do you have to apply for PPP with your bank, or can you apply with any bank?
You can apply with any bank that is either an SBA, already an SBA participating lender, or the institution that's been approved to participate in this particular program. If your bank happens to be an SBA participating lender, then that would be a great place to start. I think from a practical standpoint, if they know you and they are a participant, you would more than likely have better success getting access to PPP than if you go to an institution where you have no business relationship.
Okay, so you don't necessarily have to have a relationship with the participating lender to submit a package with them?
And you don't from a legal standpoint. From a practical standpoint and just understanding how lenders think and operate, more than likely they're going to be they're going to definitely give priority to their existing customers. And then it'll be up to the individual lending institution to decide whether they're willing to use this as the entree to establishing a customer relationship with a business.
Terri, can funds be used for payroll only after business is restored, for example, after the quarantine period?
Okay, I've got to think about that one. So basically it's saying that quarantine is over. Can you still use it for payroll?
That would be my understanding of the question, yes.
Yeah. I think you could, because it's for 8 weeks. So I guess the question, it would cover 8 weeks from the time the loan is approved. So I guess it would depend on when the quarantine period ends. And that may be a case where if the quarantine period goes longer, then there'd have to be some other changes made to accessing the PPP and how it's being used and for how long.
Can you reconfirm for our callers that if they have no employees, can they still apply for PPP for themselves as an owner? And what if you're a new business, started in 2019, but have not submitted your 2019 taxes or payroll tax information? Can you still apply for the PPP?
I think the answer, that's one I would definitely need to research a little more on. In terms of whether, if you don't have employees, you're a sole proprietor, for example, you can apply for PPP. Sole proprietors are eligible. In terms of whether you're a new business, there are some time frames that is in the statute that would where the business would have to have been in operation.
So on the PPP, what if you lost some of your staff already? A few came back, but can they still apply for the PPP loan? This caller says they plan to hire the amount of employees they lost, but it may not be the same people when they get the loan.
Ooh. Wow, these are very good questions. I think the assumption, and that's the problem when people assume, correct? The assumption was that you would either be maintaining your current employees or rehiring the same employees. The language of the statute doesn't really talk about if you hire other folks that weren't affiliated with the business previously. So that's one I think I would have to check on, and it may be one of those situations where no one thought about that scenario.
How about credit unions? Are credit unions involved?
Credit unions are eligible because a lot of people don't realize that credit unions can actually participate in SBA's regular loan guarantee programs. And they can, if they're not already participating with us, they can apply to become a PPP participating lender.
So how about our banks? Is there anything we can give to our banks with the rules of engagement in the case that they've said that they don't have the program parameters yet, the rules of engagement or the applications to receive packages? Is there anything we can do to assist our banks in that manner?
Okay. Well, of course, literally the interim final rules came out last night. So that's something, I'd be glad to provide, even though I got the feeling that they probably have received those through like the Georgia Bankers Association and some of the other national lending institution trade associations. But as we continue to build this out, I think there would be ways we would have some things that you could take and have that discussion with your lender. I know we're working on some fact sheets that are kind of just basic in plain English to kind of at least start that conversation. And then once they're interested, we could help them with the more detailed procedural guidelines.
Terri, what if the business was scheduled to open in May? Is that person eligible if their business is going to be affected because it's in an airport? So it would definitely be affected by the loss of traffic.
Yeah, that case would probably more likely be an EIDL loan versus a PPP, since they hadn't opened. But the EIDLs, startup businesses are eligible because they can show, okay, we've put X amount of dollars already towards opening this business in May. And obviously, because of the current situation, they're not going to be able to. They've done projections. They can show this is what I would have been able to do, and I'm not able to. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but yes, new businesses or businesses that haven't yet opened could qualify for EIDL.
So is there a certain credit score needed for these loans? And is it the credit score of your business or the credit score of the owner?
Okay. Probably for the EIDL, and I'll kind of take it in order. With EIDL, there isn't a minimum, well, actually in any of this, there's not a specified minimum credit score. That said, like with EIDL, I know SBA has probably worked with people with credit scores maybe in the high fives, low to middle 600s. With the loans that have bank participation, that may be a little higher because while we don't have a minimum credit score, those lending institutions may. What we're hoping will happen is because, in some of the cases, like with the us covering the existing debt for SBA borrowers, that there'd be an incentive to, okay, I'll go ahead and make this loan because of us covering the cost through the CARES Act. So to answer your question, there's not a minimum credit score. If there is a business credit score, they'll look at it, but unless you're a very large company, they're going to put more emphasis on the individual credit score.
Okay. What's the time frame for the EIDL loan to be repaid? What's the number of years?
The EIDL, 30 years. Normally there's, we would negotiate and say, well, it's up to 30 years, but it could be less. But my understanding is they're just automatically doing them all for 30. Of course, there's no prepayment penalty on these. So as things get better, you get to the other side and you want to accelerate the payment, or if you're in a position to pay it off altogether, depending on how much you borrow, you can do that without penalty.
So we have many businesses that are in a stoppage mode because of the quarantine, and they don't want to exhaust the PPP funds while their employees are at home with no guarantee that the non-working employees will return to their company. How should they handle that?
Wow. Because I know I've had that question too, in terms of, well, my folks can't work because of the quarantine situation, the stay-at-home situation. It's kind of a calculated risk in a way, because the big unknown factor is how long is this going to last? If we feel like it's going to be over in May, June, then you might find it beneficial to go ahead and pay them, even though they're not working in your business, if you feel it's going to be difficult for you to get those employees back if you let them go totally.
With the idle loan, what's the maximum amount that you can borrow?
$2 million.
And then you also have the 30 years to pay that back.
Yes.
Okay, and are you qualified if you, excuse me, are you qualified if you had a bankruptcy in the last 7 to 10 years? And it would be a personal bankruptcy, not a bankruptcy on your business.
The last discussion I had with the Office of Disaster Assistance on this is if you're discharged, don't have an active bankruptcy, they're not going to consider it. If you were discharged yesterday, as far as they're concerned, you're not in bankruptcy. So they're not going by that usual, okay, it's going to be on your credit report for 7 to 10 years. They're not really looking at that in this situation.
So our sole proprietors have a question. Without a W-2 or a 1099, how do they prove their salary?
Ooh. If they're sole proprietor, I guess you would use your Schedule C in terms of you indicate what your revenues are. If you itemize, this much is for salary, I guess that work. Otherwise, they'll look at the overall, what has come into the company or your net profit. If you don't have a designated salary on the Schedule C.
Wow. Okay, do we have any other questions in the chat box? Did we miss anyone? Terri, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
What I was going to offer, and you're going to probably think she's going to wish she hadn't done this. If you would like to communicate with me directly, if you think of a question later, you can actually email me directly. And my email address is Terri, Terri, D as in David, ENISON @sba.gov. And then I'll be glad to follow up with you. I'll send responses on some of the questions that we've already been given that I need to follow up on.
Okay, and I'll send out her email to all of you, as well as if you'll give me a day or two, we'll send out a link for the recording. And this has been very informational for us, Terri. We all really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing. Great job you've done for the ATL Airport Chamber today. And we wish you well. Take care, and everyone enjoy your day.
You all take care and be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.